Good evening, everybody. We're going to get started in about a minute. We'll just give everyone a chance to get settled and booted up and ready to go. Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening, and we really appreciate those of you who could join us, taking some time out of your busy schedule to join us on this conversation, a very important topic. My name is David Urbanato. I'm Deputy Chief. I oversee the Community Engagement Section at Valley Metro. And I'm going to just do a quick intro and run through some logistics for how the virtual meeting's going to work, the nuts and bolts, and then we'll get into the meat of the presentation. And so I'll get started. Before we go, just to note, you're all muted. With online meetings, it can very quickly get chaotic with inadvertent background noise. So everyone's muted. At the conclusion of this presentation, we will take comments and questions, and we'll provide instructions on how to participate as we go through this presentation tonight. If you are having technical difficulties, you may need to disconnect and then reconnect. We're also going to post in the chat section instructions on, you see on the slide here, there's instructions on what to do if you're having technical issues. You can try calling in if you're having audio issues. There is an access code and a passcode. We will put those in a chat feature so that you can reference it as you go should you lose connection during the course of the meeting. And we also have Spanish interpretation being provided live tonight. And I want to welcome now our interpreter, Juan, and he's going to explain how to connect to the Spanish language channel.
Hello, my name is Juan. I am the Spanish simultaneous interpreter. Buenos días, buenas noches. ¿Qué tal? Yo soy el intérprete de español simultáneo y vamos a estar haciendo la interpretación. Tiene usted el canal de audio en español al teléfono 1-408-418-9388. El código de acceso es 2486-967-2589 y la contraseña es 287-63896. Por su atención, gracias.
David, you might.
So now we'll get back into the meeting logistics. As we go through the meeting, we're going to be using a fun interactive tool called Mentimeter. It's a way that you can, it's a polling tool that you can use to weigh in on the conversation as we go. You can use your smartphone or your computer. You don't have to participate in the polls. We encourage it, but it is certainly by no means required. The questions and activities will appear on your phone or computer once you join the meeting. No need to download a new app. The tool just runs automatically from your browser. So just a word of encouragement to join those if you can. And before we get into the meat of the presentation, I did want to recognize other members of the Valley Metro team who are in the meeting tonight. This is obviously a huge undertaking, the bus network redesign, and it is a big team effort being led by our service planning section, which is led by Michael Eshelman, and Aaron Javier is the project manager. We also have Marissa Holliday from Valley Metro, also from the community engagement section. We have Dane Riles who oversees our FAIR program. So if anyone has any FAIR questions, We do have someone who's a very subject matter expert who can handle questions on fares. And then also we have Henata Klo, who is with our communications section. So we have a full Valley Metro team here joining with our consultants. And with that, I want to introduce Melissa Sather. She's with a TMD, one of our consultants working with us on this important project. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Melissa.
All right. Thank you, David. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I know everyone has really busy schedules, so we really appreciate you taking the time to listen to our presentation, participate, and give us your feedback on the Valley Metro Bus Network. So if we want to go, okay, so we are starting the bus network redesign, which is really just a look at the current Valley Metro bus and rail system, but wanting to make sure that the system that's out there today is responding to the needs of people within the community. And so we know that over the last 5 years, there have been a lot of shifts in how people travel, when people travel. There are new developments, new growth and employment centers and population centers that have a demand for transit. And we want to make sure that the bus and rail system reflects those changes so that it's useful for the people who want to ride it. So this project will include a detailed route-by-route review of ridership and performance, and might include some recommended changes on alignments, frequencies, and spans to many routes within the system. The outcome of the project will be to create a network that is aimed at growing ridership and improves the use of Valley Metro's limited resources. So our project timeline, we kicked this project off in the spring of last year. And over the last 6 months or so, we've been analyzing existing conditions, looking at ridership trends, performance trends, to really understand how people are using the system. Here we are with our first phase of public engagement. We've been hosting a series of pop-up meetings, community meetings, discussion sessions all over the county over the last few weeks and continuing into November. Really just listening sessions, looking at understanding and collecting input on what's working well and what needs improvement. Over the next 6 months or so, we'll be developing our service recommendations and then coming back in the spring of next year to share our draft plans and proposals for service improvements with a goal of presenting a final report in the summer of next year. So the goals for today are really to understand community priorities for potential transit investments and understand what key issues residents or visitors are facing that might affect mobility within the service area. And finally, discuss ideas for improving Valley Metro service. So here's the poll that we have. So Mentimeter, you can either scan the QR code if you want to participate or go to www.menti.com and enter the code here that you see on the screen. Completely optional, also completely anonymous. It's just a fun way for us to collect some feedback and see how see sort of the thoughts of everyone who's in the room. So if you want to participate, please do so. If you have any issues, technical problems with it, please leave a note in the chat and someone will try to help you out. So the first question is just to get a sense of who's here tonight. So the question is, how often do you ride Valley Metro? Is this 5 or more days a week, 3 to 4 days a week, sometimes, rarely, or never? So I'll give a couple minutes for people to put in some results. Go. Okay, so great. Results coming in. So far, looks like most people ride Valley Metro service at least sometimes, with someone riding very frequently 5 or more days a week. We can go on to the next slide, which just wants to know again who's here. So if you could let us know what city you live in, just want a sense of where people are coming from. Phoenix. Phoenix and Sunny Slope. Or Phoenix. Okay. Phoenix. So a little bit about Valley Metro. Looks like most people ride on a regular basis, but Valley Metro operates 2 light rail lines, 1 streetcar line, and 95 bus routes throughout Maricopa County, with 145 daily boardings across all modes. So it's a very important service for people living within the community. The next slide here shows a system map. So one of the things that we're doing is looking at ridership patterns, where people are getting on and off the buses. So this map shows weekday boarding activity at all the stops. So the bigger the circle, that means there are more people who get on the bus there. The green dots are bus boardings, gray is light rail, and then red is streetcar. So this represents about 145,000 people a day, as I mentioned earlier. Ridership currently is at about 60% of where it was pre-pandemic, but service levels are back up to 90%. So this means that while service has primarily been restored, ridership hasn't fully come back. And one of the things we want to understand are really what some of those barriers are to riding transit within the region. So one of the things that we want to talk through are service design trade-offs or design choices. Go to the next slide. And why trade-offs are important. So Valley Metro, like any entity, has limited resources. And so making improvements in one part of the service area often means taking resources from another. So we really want to understand what everyone's priorities are when riding transit, so that we can design a network that works for you. We know that some of the decisions that we make will affect how people can use the network, just based on how the routes are designed. So we're going to go through a couple of examples, talk through a couple more poll questions. So the first question is looking at what is most important to you when considering whether to ride transit. And so we're looking at having a shorter walk to a bus stop. So what's going to be important to you is having routes that go many places. You have convenient access to a route. Shorter wait for the bus. This means that frequencies are high. Service might come every 15 minutes or so. You don't have as long to wait for the bus. And then finally, a shorter travel time on the bus. And so just trying to figure out which is more important kind of affects how we design the network and what the routes are designed to do. You can also leave some comments in the chat if you want to explain why you picked the options that you did. I can see the responses and I can read. So far with a couple of, I'll give another 20 seconds or so in case anyone else wants to respond. But so far, for the bus is winning at about 2-1, shorter walk and shorter travel times. So definitely interested to hear why you voted the way that you did. Great. So service by time of day. One of the other things we want to look at is when service is provided. So since the pandemic, we've seen a general shift in travel later in the day. There's a lot less emphasis on people traveling in that early morning peak commute period. So what you see in the chart here, the purple, these are trips on Valley Metro by hour of the day. So you can see there are some strong peaks around 7 a.m. and again around 4 p.m. With some kind of pretty strong peak demand that dips in the middle of the day. And then the non-transit modes, this is car, walking, biking. has a similar peak activity, but it's a lot later in the day. So the peaks are at 9 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and you can see that there's this shift towards later in the day. And also, it's a little bit flatter for non-transit modes than it is for transit. So one of the things we want to look at is when service is being provided. We also know that Valley Metro service is generally flat throughout the day. It operates the same level of service in the morning, the middle of the day, the evening, but there are a lot of variations in when people ride. So the next few questions we'll talk about service by time of day. And it looks like if we've had anyone join in the last couple of minutes, we're doing some interactive polls. If you want to participate, it's totally optional and anonymous, but you can join at menti.com with the code on the screen. If that's not working, we can also flash the QR code again, or I don't know. Yeah, so everyone can participate. So the next question is, at what time of day is it most important to add more frequency? Is that early in the morning, in the middle of the day, in the evenings? What time of day is it most important to you to have more frequent service? And also, please don't hesitate to let us know what frequency means to you. Is this 20-minute service, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, just an improvement over where it's at today? Or if there are certain routes where you'd like to see more frequency, that chat feature is open for you to leave any thoughts that you might have on how to improve service. So the next question is, at what time of day would it be most important to extend service hours? So would that be, so that's either service starting earlier in the morning or ending later in the evenings? Looking at weekdays, Saturday, Sunday, when do you wish that not just having more frequent service, but that service existed at all? So extending to have longer service hours. So far, one vote for weekday evenings. One for Saturday mornings. Sorry, can we go back? I just wanted to. Okay. Okay, so one more vote for weekday evening seems to, okay, win out. And yeah, and please do say what time, if you want to drop into the chat, what time you'd like to see service until. Is that 11 o'clock, midnight, 1 a.m.? What time would you like extended service hours, or if that's on particular routes or to particular places? Right, to the next question slide. So one of the other things we wanted to talk about is sort of this decision between having fixed route service or on-demand service. So on-demand services, microtransit, rideshare, lots of different names for it, but really what it is are services like WeRide or Glendale On Board, Chandler Flex. They operate like an Uber or a Lyft, where you can see there's a designated zone shown in the green, and then you can be picked up or dropped off at the purple locations within that zone. And so rather than having a fixed route that operates on a fixed schedule with certain times and certain stops, you can be picked up anywhere within that zone. And really these are used in areas where there's not really enough ridership demand for a fixed route service, or the destinations aren't condensed along or concentrated on a single corridor, and is really helpful to help people connect into the broader Valley Metro bus network as sort of those connections into the broader service area. So we can go to the next slide. And so, yeah, similar, you request this with through an app or call center, and you're the one responsible for scheduling the ride. I think I covered the other points, but really what we're looking for in the next poll question is just if you were in an area where, it's lower density, there's not as much, as many destinations, which do you prefer just as a service type? Do you prefer a route that has a fixed regular schedule and designated bus stops, or an on-demand rideshare type service that you have to call, but that'll connect you to various places? It also looks like we might have someone new who just joined. We're doing some interactive polling using Mentimeter. You can go join on your web browser or at menti.com with the use code there if you want to participate in the polls. Completely optional and anonymous. So far pretty split with the slight preference towards on-demand services. Go. Okay, so now just getting into general service questions, wanting to know which of the following service improvements is most important to you. So we're looking for, make this a little bigger, sorry. More frequent service on weekdays, more frequent service on weekends, longer hours of service, routes to new places, shorter travel times on the bus, better on-time performance, reliability, or more direct express routes. If you're interested in more direct express routes, really would be interested to know from where and to where. If you want to drop in the chat, just, I voted for the express routes. I would like to see something between A and B. That'd be really helpful. Same on shorter travel times. If you have ideas, is that faster bus speeds or more direct routes with fewer transfers? What does that look like to you? This is really, we're trying to collect input on what your ideal transit network looks like. So this is really your opportunity to get your voice in, your opinions in. So anything you'd like to see, please leave us a note in the chat. And then the next question, similar. So which of the following capital improvements is most important to you? Are you looking for safety on board vehicles, safety at bus stops or stations, cleanliness of vehicles, cleanliness of bus stop stations, ease of fare payment, real-time information, better customer service, or better bus stop amenities? Okay, thank you. So generally split so far, safety on board vehicles has 2 votes, and some others having 1. Okay, and then finally, this is open response. What are your ideas to improve Valley Metro service? Please put anything down that you would like to see to improve service. We also, we have a small group tonight. We can call on people if you want to share any of your thoughts. You can raise your hand, or if you have any questions or comments. We are here to talk about how to improve the network, answer any questions that you have. So please give us your thoughts. So one comment related to adding Apple Wallet support and open payments. Bus rapid transit. Dedicated lanes for buses, improve those operating speeds, reduce delay. Suburb to suburb transit, okay. If you want to let us know which suburbs, be helpful. dispatchers that connect you on Valley Metro Paratransit and dial a ride because rides are late and it's difficult. Chandler to Scottsdale would be an example of a suburb to suburb transit. Okay, great. All day express buses, so not just for that peak commute, back to that time of day chart, people traveling throughout the middle of the day, the evenings, having express buses, not just in those peak hours. Okay, so the next steps for our project, as I said, we're really in the information gathering phase. We will be collecting input over the next 2 weeks and then starting to develop service recommendations over the next couple of months. So what you can do, we have a project website, we have a survey. I really encourage everyone to go to that website and take the survey. It's really helpful for us. It has a lot of similar questions, but also more in-depth questions just about who's riding the service and the types of improvements people want to see. And then if you want to sign up for our email so you can get project updates, and then you'll get alerted to when we're having our follow-up meetings in the spring. So you can join a similar meeting to share your feedback on the draft plan. Thank you. We got a link to the question in the chat, so please take a look at that. We really appreciate taking the time to fill that out or share it with your friends, family, colleagues, anyone who you think might be interested.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. So now we're really at the just the real crux of the meeting is a chance for you participants to ask questions, comment. There's a number of ways you can do that if you're on the meeting, and you can see them up there on your screen. If you joined us from the WebEx app or through a browser on your computer, you can just use the raise your hand button. It's at the bottom, it's at the bottom of the screen towards the right. Just looks there's just the word raise, and there's a little hand symbol there. If you just raise your hand, our staff will note that and will call on you. If you're using the WebEx app on your phone, what you need to do is tap the More Options tab, which is basically 3 dots that'll appear on your phone screen, and then tap Raise Hand. And if you've joined by phone, hit *3 or *3, and that will indicate that you're raising your hand and that we will call on you. And when you are called on, you will be asked to unmute. You can click unmute me, or if you're on the phone, you hit *6 when prompted. And one other way to submit a question is to just type your question into the Q&A box or the chat box. And we have a moderator monitoring that, and they will read your question and staff will answer. So with that, I will hand it over, and hopefully we've got some people who have some questions and want to continue the conversation. So in the meantime, I do want to second what Melissa was saying. We have posted the link to the survey in the chat. And the survey is really just an opportunity to give more detailed input on what your priorities are, what you'd like to see from the bus network. And it's also something you could take when it's convenient for you, when you have the time to think through some answers. And as Melissa said, please share the link to the survey with anyone you think might be interested in weighing in on this. The more voices we have in this conversation, the better, and the more we know what we recommend reflects the priorities and needs of riders and prospective riders.
Okay, David, we have a question from Aaron, and that question is, What is the status of Scottsdale BRT?
Do we have anyone on who can respond to that? Just another bookkeeping note: if we don't have an answer or a good answer for you tonight, we can get your contact information, and someone will follow up with you tomorrow with a more complete answer. But I'll just kick it back to staff and see if anyone feels like they can address that one live tonight.
There was also a follow-up question about what's the status of the I-17 Express bus enhancement?
Hi, David. I can take those questions at a very vague level. So I'm Michael Ushelman. I'm the Deputy Chief of Service Planning here at Valley Metro. The Scottsdale BRT is included within the MAG, the Maricopa Association of Governments investment plan, as a project that will be funded. They're still working out details of exactly what parts of that proposed BRT project are included, because it goes through multiple cities. So there's still some discussion happening there. But it's a project that's in the regional transportation plan and is funded probably a few years out at least. With respect to the I-17 Express bus enhancement, that's also, I believe it's a MAG project, if I'm understanding what that project is particular. But it's the Maricopa Association of Governments is working on a regional express bus study that is including looking at how to make enhancements to various corridors, including I-17, I-10, State Route 51, et cetera. If there's something more specific about I-17 Express Bus, we can certainly take that question and talk with folks back at the office about how we can get you a really detailed answer.
Okay, another question. Are the updates only for the city buses and light rail?
So once again, this is Michael Ushelman, Deputy Chief of Service Planning for Valley Metro. Yes, so the primary focus of the bus network redesign is going to be the bus service. We're also, as part of it, looking at rail schedules and timing and those sorts of things with the bus network. But the primary focus of this effort is bus service, where the buses are going, how often they're running, what times of day they're running, what communities are being served, what major attractions are being served, and kind of how they're being served by the various routes that are operated by Valley Metro City and the City of Phoenix.
Another question is, are there plans to combine all of the microtransit apps into the Valley Metro app?
Hi, I can take this one. This is Aaron Xavier in the planning department. So there is currently a phased plan to integrate all the microtransit services and apps into one. I think at the present time it is a bit one-sided with the microtransit app showing a lot of Valley Metro service, but not the other way around essentially. So the first phase of the integration will be to have wayfinding go both ways. On the Valley Metro apps, you'll be able to see the services that you can get and plan a trip seamlessly from one service to the other. And the next phase will be to integrate the fare payment so that you can pay one fare on both services. So currently we don't have an official timeline for that yet, but there is definitely plans in the works and a lot of anticipation to get more integration with those services on the app side.
Aaron said, the trip planning feature alone would be a game changer, as most people don't even know of these services.
Yeah, agreed. I think there have been some good advancements in the last few years on the microtransit side to show, real-time in a specific format that's ingestible in a kind of universal way. So hopefully we'll be able to integrate the real-time expectations that we have already for our fixed route, and have that on the flexible route side as well. And I think, yeah, luckily that'll be one of the first of the two phases to at least get a little bit more awareness and synergy with those services.
Okay. Our next question is, are you guys planning on changing anything with Phoenix DAR since it's Phoenix Public Transit 2? Asking since I use it. And that question is from Sam.
So I can take this again. So the dial-a-ride services, paratransit services aren't technically part of the scope of this effort, though the way that the laws work, they are kind of hand in glove with the dial-a-ride services being necessarily tied to the way that the fixed route is laid out within the city. So there will be corresponding changes, I imagine, if any kind of route is changing. Of course, there are certain municipal freedoms to allow for added service, say within Phoenix and their specific local dial-a-ride versus the regional ADA, paratransit, and ride choice services that will be most likely restricted to the three-quarter boundary around the fixed route network within the next year or so throughout the valley.
Our next question is Glendale included? It feels like Glendale tries to do everything themselves rather than try to use Valley Metro's existing tools, their own apps, etc. It is quite annoying.
So this is Aaron again. We are definitely including Glendale as we are with all of our member cities. So all of their fixed routes as well as how their flexible services kind of interact with our fixed routes are being considered. And members of Glendale staff are on the technical advisory group. And of course, their staff is always as integrated and part of our service planning efforts. Which is on an ongoing basis. So we are working with them, as well as Peoria to the west and Phoenix to the east of them, to make sure there's a little bit more of a seamless service integration and consideration for what works best for the regional mobility of folks, so you don't have to feel as fragmented at the city borders as it may sometimes feel.
All right, our next question is, eventually will you be able to use Copper Card to pay for micro transit?
That is the goal. That is probably more than a year, 2 years out at this point. That'll be the second phase of the integration. So hopefully it'll be all swimming in kind of the same back end soup that folks will be able to not only pay for microtransit services for participating jurisdictions in our app, but vice versa. And you'll be able to do that across modes. So you'll be able to pay a single fare from a fixed route to a flex route and vice versa. We are currently in the works trying to integrate some of the microtransit services around the region. I think most notably would really be the WeRide services. So currently Avondale, Goodyear, and Peoria that have those services. I think Glendale is currently running their own service that may or may not also be integrated operationally into Valley Metro. So that itself may be a bit of a barrier to the integration. But I think overall we have looked at all the technological barriers and have seen that it is possible to do that on the back end. It is just a bit of a heavy lift to integrate all of those in such a way that you don't need to say, have both of the apps on your phone and open. It would all just be integrated on the back end, but Copper Card and then the back end actual mobile fare payment is planned for integration as far as I understand it.
I just want to thank everybody for giving us those questions so far. It's a great discussion, and please keep them coming. Our next question is, are there plans to put more bus lanes in place? 72, etc. could use some spot treatments.
So I think, as Michael alluded to, 72 is one of the top corridors on the list regionally to get BRT treatment. I think there are some political knots maybe to untie with that as far as when that actually goes into place. It is currently planned to be in one of the earlier phases of implementation of the 479 funding. But bus lanes in particular are a bit of a sticking point. I know in the past we've tried to do kind of BRT style service, thinking on Country Club, where that essentially didn't really get much dedicated right of way, and it didn't go so well. So I think instead of trying to do some kind of pseudo BRT or BRT light, the agency does advocate for a little bit more of a full treatment if it's going to be called a BRT. But of course, the municipalities, just because of the political structure at hand, do have the final say for things like taking lanes or BRT. And it can also be a very tricky thing to put the dedicated lanes where they're actually useful, where the traffic gets heavy, because we're competing among the interests of general traffic and traffic engineering and whatnot. So currently, I don't know if there are any lines on maps for 72, but I believe there are some for the planned BRT in the city of Phoenix, which will be roughly 35th Ave, all the way to about Van Buren, and then going east to Central Station. Though I'm not sure exactly where the dedicated lanes will and won't be on that corridor as of yet. I think they're still hashing those out.
Okay, our comment is, the new express bus boarding islands are great in downtown hub area. More of this type of infrastructure would be very nice.
Yeah, thank you for that comment, Darren. I think so many of you may be aware of a bit of a history on the downtown expresses. They were rerouted for the construction of downtown hub, and were very recently returned more or less to a similar alignment that they had before. And so those islands were placed and planned in accordance with previous ridership hotspots that were right around that area. So if we do maybe see any more hotspots or areas that could merit some of that treatment, we'll keep that in mind, and I'm glad those are popular among folks.
So while we're waiting, I do want to just chime in. We did put in the chat window the web address for this study, and it is a great portal and resource for all things bus network redesign. There's also comment forms. There's also a link to the survey on the project website, which is just valleymetro.org/your voice. And then we'll also, before we close, I'll also put a phone number and an email address if you want to have follow-up questions or you want to send a follow-up email. Thank you. So we can leave that screen up and give some time for any other remaining questions or comments. All right, we're going to just give it a few more minutes, just in case anyone joins late. But we're going to stay here for at least a couple more minutes. If you have any last-minute questions or thoughts or comments you want to share while we're alive, so we're still here.
Our next comment is, the biggest hurdle I have noticed just discussing with others on riding the bus is they don't know how to do it, or they don't even know that a bus exists, etc. How is marketing being increased?
I guess I can try to take a stab at that one. I know that marketing is it is a huge priority from the Valley Metro side. We devote a lot of time and resources to figuring out ways to market the service, to make sure people are aware it exists, to make sure people know where to go to find information if they're interested in riding the rail. So we do have a we do commit significant resources to marketing. That said, the marketing landscape's changing, and we're constantly tweaking our mix of marketing tools and outreach avenues. So I guess one response will be that we will continue to do that. We can continue to look at data for more effective ways to market, for new channels to use. And of course, we remain open to suggestions on channels that you think we should be more prominent on, where you may not have seen as much of a Valley Metro presence as you'd like, or that you think would be helpful. So yeah, I guess I'll just second our commitment to continuing to commit the resources needed to market and publicize the availability of our great transit system, as well as being open and flexible to pivot and change our marketing mix as the market changes, as our needs change. So.
I'd like to add to what David said about marketing. I can say that we have, like he said, marketing tactics in the past few years has changed and continues to change, and we've tried to adapt. We've been trying to take more storytelling, more of a storytelling approach to the way we use social media, doing more videos. We are also investing more on media buys, and we also have partnerships with local teams like the Phoenix Suns and the Mercury, as well as ASU and Sun Devils. So we are always open to try and reach more people, especially students. There's a really big push for us to try and get more students to take transit. I also, just looking here at your note about the Valley Metro Notes campaign, about that we did it about a decade ago. I Um, I wasn't at Valley Metro about 10 years ago, but I can try and get more information for you, Erin, on that campaign and see if we would like to take a similar approach to it as well. And yes, I am Renata Claw. I am the PIO for Valley Metro.
Sam said, I think more commercials and classes showing people how to ride the bus, different kinds of transit options, would get a lot of people wanting to ride.
Thank you for that comment. And I could just second, I know that we have a pretty robust transit education program. We have an outreach coordinator who focuses solely on transit education, teaching people how to use the system, how to pay a fare, how to look up a route, and how to route plan. Admittedly, a lot of that is focused on schools, and because those are going to be the next generation of riders. So, but I think there is certainly always an opportunity to look for new ways to employ rider education. So I appreciate that that comment and that input.
Another comment was, also increasing marketing to schools, replacing school buses with transit rides, etc. High schools run a lot of duplicate service, and that simply isn't good stewardship of our tax dollars. Why are we duplicating services? We should be getting kids onto transit.
So I can note here, so we do definitely agree that marketing to schools, getting out into the community in that sense, I think as David and Hanada mentioned, is critical. So they're kind of a captive audience in the schools when we go out, trying to do a little bit of charitable things here and there as well to show some goodwill. But some of the schedules that we currently do have do allow for what we call trippers, which are kind of one-off deviations that are timed specifically to bell times for many schools in the region. Sometimes we're able to do this, and other times it's a little bit more prohibitive given the distance from current routing. Um, Also, sometimes the will or desire of the school to have that service run by them. And there's also a bit of a tightrope to walk with putting specific service targeted to only school students, and having to allow the broader community to also ride those trips. That can be a bit of a tightrope, admittedly, to make sure that we're staying true to the letter of the law that keeps the funding flowing, but also giving the access to those students that need it. So, and we are reaching out to, I believe, some schools as well in this effort, but um, I think that's definitely a good point, and a lot of our ridership does go up and down. We do notice with the coming and going of the school year. So definitely a big part of the demographic that's riding, and always looking for ways to better serve them and better understand their travel needs.
Our next comment is, many other areas utilize transit as their school buses, even areas like Nashville, as well as, of course, San Francisco and New York City. I think the schools could concentrate on learning rather than running essentially a second express bus system.
Hi, this is Mike Eshelman, Deputy Chief of Planning. And I actually just started at Valley Metro about 7 months ago. I actually came from the San Francisco Bay Area, and my agency ran quite a bit of school service. And It's actually a little bit complex and difficult to operate. So we make 4 service changes a year, and they're not totally timed up with the school year. And the schools each have different start and end times, start and end days, different bell times at different times. And especially when there's fuzzy or no district boundaries, it's difficult to tell where the kids are going to start and end their trips. So it's really difficult for public transit to be able to respond to all these dynamic different routes and times of day where service needs to come from in order to meet the needs of the schools. We also require a lot of lead time when we're making changes to schedules, and a lot of times the schools don't know their upcoming bell schedules until it's too late for us to change our own schedules. Those are just some of the challenges. It's also expensive for the public transit operator to operate because the school buses pull out once in the morning and then go back to the garage during the middle of the day and then pull out again for 1 or 2 trips in the afternoon. So while on the surface it does look like it's a very obvious thing to do, it's really challenging from a coordination standpoint. The ideal is that we have a really strong local route network of regular bus routes that are operating all day that students find easy to use and can allow them to reliably get to and from various schools from where they live. And so that's ultimately, you know, a key goal of redesigning the route network, is making sure that people have a lot of different options to reliably get to whatever they need to get to, whether it's work or school, et cetera.
What about tapping the school buses funding to fund this express bus? Instead of them paying money to run school buses, they can pay for platinum passes for the kids.
I think we can take some suggestions back, and in our discussions with various school districts, we can talk about how our service is meeting their needs and whether their students whether there's a strong desire for them to have better access to some of our fare products and how we can coordinate together on that. I think that's a good suggestion.
Hey there, this is Dane Riles, the manager of FAIR programs. I will also mention that in a recent board discussion around our FAIR programs in a FAIR study, there was a lot of interest on educating students, how we get them acclimated to transit, as well as the FAIR options that are available. We do work with a number of school districts, but I think that's a valid point that, there's kind of both sides of that discussion, the service itself, as well as how the schools would fund the actual FAIR payment of that service. So we definitely have some eyes on that topic, and I think there'll be more discussions coming soon on that topic as well.
This is Aaron again, too. I'd like to note we've also had some pretty good success in the current microtransit services, actually helping to provide service to schools not only at specific bell times, but also to facilitate after school activities for kids that, come in and out at all different hours. Of course, there are complications with those services as well in terms of cost, and also handling a kind of surge of demand and having to make sure that there's not a bunch of vans in addition to the lines of parents coming to do the pickup. But those have also seemed to, alleviate some of the need for the school bus transport and facilitated the flexibility of the demand, I think, in a better way than some of the trippers honestly have. So there might be a couple of different solutions that we can and have been providing that we can expand.
Next question is there a way to have Valley Metro take over the ASU campus shuttles, have ASU students ride free, but allow anyone to ride for express rapid fare? This is an untapped freeway BRT network.
So yeah, for those that are unfamiliar, ASU does run essentially double-decker buses that are exclusive to students. They have, I think, in a couple of conversations we've had, been pretty adamant that they, like the control of that service. I think the students as well seem to be happy with some of the elements of that service that are difficult to reproduce on a more public setting, like just having essentially college students on the bus and not being open to the broader public, for better or worse. So there are certain elements that are difficult for us to duplicate, but also it comes down to the will of ASU essentially, and handing over control of those services, which it doesn't seem like they're willing to do at this time. And the only other alternative would be essentially to compete with them, which has its own. So we have, in the past studied the effects of this, obviously on fixed route service, especially the light rail. That did seem to take a hit on the traffic, especially from downtown to the ASU campus that used to be taken on by primarily the light rail. That essentially did take a bit of the market share away. So we are open to taking over those services, similar services, but we may not be able to facilitate all the services that they want, such as having Wi-Fi on those, and also limiting them to not be only students, which may be deal breakers for them. But at the moment, in the conversations that we have, they don't seem to be open to relinquishing control of those services at this time.
What about special event shuttles from the park and rides that are normally used for work days, on days like Suns games, etc., concerts, etc.?
I can take this one. So I know currently we do try to stay on top of events, especially those that are along the light rail, and perform, I think, some services that are above and beyond, specifically adding another car to the consist. So usually we have 2 cars on a train consist, and we'll add another one to add capacity, adding extra, I think, security and customer service reps out on the stations as well. Added kind of one-off services are a possibility. I think this is another tightrope that we walk, because we can't necessarily be providing charter service for specific events or venues, because that would violate some of the rules related to the funding that we collect. But there are definitely a lot of events that come to town, like the Final Four, or any kind of final tournaments for basketball, football as well. The Super Bowls have come, and so we tried to think of ways to, as you mentioned, do shuttle services for those events. So I think that is possible, as long as it's not necessarily being paid for by those venues. I think that is a possibility, though. Then we do get into the issue of funding for some of those events and trying to adjudicate which events merit special treatment. And we've also thought of shuttles, not only for special events, but also for destinations like parks that do seem to have a lot of capacity that can't be met for the parking that's provided, from park and rides to certain park trailheads as well. So there are other special circumstances kind of mirroring the challenges of special events where you have a lot of people pouring into an area where there's just not enough parking, where there is a park and ride that is adjacent and there wouldn't be any kind of overnight parking required that would violate the terms of use of the park and rides that I think do merit further investigation for kind of appealing to a broader spectrum of trip uses like that. So definitely we'll look into that.
Comment says, the issue is I had plenty of concerts at the venue on 75th Avenue. Find myself having to drive because there's a bus there but no bus home.
Yep, that's duly noted. I think there are definitely a lot of venues, and Phoenix is growing, I think, as a venue for some of these concerts. And we do keep active track of the activities for events in the region, especially as they relate to events that cause increased demand or traffic delays that impact quality of service. So we already are tracking the events. I think it would just come down to coordinating service between Valley Metro and the city of Phoenix, possibly providing some of those higher use or higher attended events with some kind of a plan. So we can see what some of the other regions around the country are doing to do that, while not necessarily violating any kind of charter rules or providing charter service that we're not supposed to.
Comment says, also State Farm Stadium should be ponying up for expanded Route 70 services if they are going to have events and their mode of parking is terrible as is.
Yeah, State Farm Stadium, it's an interesting case. We have been in kind of on and off talks with the city of Glendale and expanding 70 service, and I think there may have been another route possibly expanding there. But I think to your point, we've largely been talking along the lines of municipal funding because it doesn't seem like State Farm Stadium itself is looking to do any kind of funding or any kind of private entity that's related to State Farm. And so essentially we've done some tentative plans to provide added service there, both similar to the service that you mentioned for bigger events, namely the Super Bowl, where obviously we had no real for folks on current fixed route services to provide at least a little bit of added service to accommodate those really big events. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to go further than the planning stages in large part, I believe, because of funding essentially on the city side.
And Aaron, I just chime in again. I want to thank you for all your questions and your comments. Really appreciate your engagement. The last slide, that even if when we close the meeting tonight, of course, we're still available to hear your comments, hear your feedback. You can use the contact us resources up on the screen now. You can go through the Valley Metro website, but these, I would start here with the Your Voice website just because it's a more direct line to submit comments and provide us feedback.
Aaron says, another small thing, a lot of transit agencies are introducing merch and swag. Should be made available to buy at, say, Central Station.
That's a great suggestion, Aaron. I will share that. Renata and I will share that with our marketing team. Yeah, we do invest in merch as well as a way of market the service and to just to expand the reach of our brand and increase awareness of the system. So, but I appreciate that comment.
Yeah, I think we were actually just talking to some folks from the Oakland area at AC Transit who were talking about a drop from a company called Oaklandish that does certain merch with their old logos and whatnot. So, yeah, always a good way to get buzz and have people walking around with your logo. It's free advertising.
Aaron says, also Central Station needs signage. There is nothing to denote that Central Station right now.
Yeah, that's duly noted. I think so. It is fairly new. I think they only just started service there a couple days ago, but um, it would be nice to have maybe a little bit more to denote the transit presence there. So we can pass that along to our friends in City Phoenix to see if they can get a little bit more signage for folks.
Aaron, I can answer that question. Center Station, we now have service there, but the whole project hasn't been finalized. It is a City of Phoenix project. So I will check with them about signage there and get an update on where we'll have signage, and if there are no plans to have signage there, I'll try to work with them to get that fixed.
Aaron says, it is still very much a construction zone, it feels. The buses have to navigate around construction vehicles, FedEx trucks, etc.
Yeah, I know that even though we've started having service in the bus bays there, the whole construction project has not been finalized yet. So I'll try to get you an update on timing for that.
Question is also, when are the next bus signs going to be installed? The poles are there, but it's just a pole with no sign at all.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I will get in touch with the public information officer with the transit department in Phoenix and try to get that answer for you, Aaron.
Sam wants to know, are there plans to lower bus pass costs?
Hi there. My name is Dane, Manager of Fare Programs. We'll take that one for you. We did, as I mentioned earlier, we did just have a study session with our board, not necessarily to look at that specific question, but generally to look at our overall fare system and programs. A part of what our board will also be considering and looking at is a fare administration policy. And what that does is sets an triennial cycles for us to review our fare structure, pricing, programs, and other features to ensure that we are, meeting our customers where their needs are and potentially making adjustments either way, up or down, or maybe making no adjustments at all. So there isn't anything necessarily planned to change any of our past pricing or our smart fare pricing, but it is something that our board will be reviewing soon, as well as on an ongoing basis. So that will give us more of an ongoing review of the pricing every 3 years.
Aaron said, also wanted to add this for Dane. Small transit agencies left and right, as well as major ones like MARTA, yesterday are enabling open loop payments, Apple Wallet support. Wanted this on record.
I totally hear you, Aaron. I will say that we do have open payments on our radar. Obviously, there are some technical complexities with accepting payment directly on all of our buses. But that is on our radar. Our system is capable of it. We're also looking at closed loop payments. And for anyone who may not be familiar, open loop is the ability to tap your credit card, debit card, or phone's wallet directly on the bus or light rail station to pay without needing a copper card or the Valley Metro app. So that is something that is on our radar. Closed loop payments would be the ability to have a digital copper card. So we are also looking at having a copper card within your phone's Apple or Google Wallet, so you could bypass the need to have a physical copper card and have that tappable feature within your phone's wallet. So I know that's really important and exciting feature that a lot of our customers are asking for, and we do hope to bring that to our customers as we navigate those technical considerations.
Has Apple been somewhat cooperative lately? They are the ones who seem to hold things like this up more so than beyond Valley Metro control.
I can't speak directly to Apple's cooperation, or maybe I should be saying the fruit company, I think is what we're supposed to refer to it as. But I do know that there has been some progress with other agencies being able to add their transit cards with them. So I'm hopeful that that will not be a hurdle for us.
Is there a way we can at some point get digital passes for all? The paper passes are bad and they waste paper.
Yeah, I can take that. I don't know that we can get to 100% digital. Obviously, there are some other considerations with that. However, we do, hope to get to a point where between open payments and some of the closed loop digital copper card, we can eliminate the need to have more of the paper options. We do federally have to offer a one ride option. So there are some, requirements for us to offer certain types of fare. But ultimately, our goal is to have more digital options, as well as, with the copper card. Someone using that copper card should be able to use that if it's taken care of for 10 or more years. So we do hope to continue to encourage people to use more environmentally friendly options, as well as I think introducing the different payment options that we've just discussed will eliminate some of the need for a physical pass altogether.
Are there plans to install more "Your next bus arrives in" signs at major stops? These are useful, especially if your phone is almost dead, so you don't want to have to keep looking this up on your phone.
I can take this. So we have been working with some of the cities, I think most notably City of Phoenix, to work on installing some of these signs, especially at some of the more higher ridership stops. So currently, all stops are owned by the municipalities that they are contained in. So we do try to work together with them to, predominantly promote shelters, because I think that is one of the biggest comments that we get back, especially knowing the climate of the region. So adding shade to those areas, I think, is of principal importance. But City Phoenix has also been looking into adding um, some basic signage to just let you know when the next buses will be showing up based on the real-time information. And I believe this will also be added to light rails. So currently they let you know when it's like 2 minutes away, but I think adding a little bit more of that, actual next train arrival is also in the works.
Sam added, same question almost as below, but like a virtual option if you have a disability that you can't read those signs, to have them read aloud.
So that I am not sure about as far as the accessibility elements. I know a lot of folks in the accessibility community have used NextRide, so I think there have been discussions about what the future of the NextRide system is, given some of the lower rates of use in the last few years. But I think that kind of does give that information, though, in a bit of a more cumbersome fashion. So I think we'd have to get back to everybody on what the status of that update is on that NextRide system as it relates to any kind of signage at the stops, though there may be some kind of a voice option that I'm unaware of that actually announces what the sign is reading.
Next question is, what happened to the air-conditioned light rail stop pilot and bus stop at 3rd and Washington? It just randomly got disabled one day.
That I'm not sure of. I'm familiar with the stop. I'm not sure exactly why that went away. I think in part I had heard there were some issues with maintenance on that particular stop. I think possibly related to vandalism, but also just upkeep on that station kind of running nonstop with that air conditioner. That they kind of did not continue that, but I have heard renewed efforts generally to do some analysis and work to improve the cooling nature of the stop. So usually when we design the stops, the stations for the light rail, they are engineered to kind of be as cooling as possible for, with various elements of the design related to shelter and color, even things like evapotranspiration with the trees and the light landscaping. But I'm not sure about the future of air-conditioned stops themselves or any kind of misting options. I think I've heard possible fans, but I don't know if they'll be connected to any kind of a cooling, like refrigerant apparatus, like an air conditioner.
Comment says, also there needs to be more notices about the Valley Metro app at the airport and signage pointing to the card readers, at least until open payments are a thing.
Hey there, I can take that one. I know we have had some conversations with the launch of our new fare system last year. We did have some conversations with the airport about additional materials in general that they may need and may be able to help customers navigate the fare system. So I definitely think that's something that we can revisit and see if there are other ways that we can help promote not only the fare system but the transit system overall. And making it as easy as possible for visitors or people who want to connect to the airport that way to find their way and know what the options are. So we will revisit that.
Comment says, there's lots of marketing regarding Waymo at the airport and not one thing about local public transit.
Erin, we certainly can share that input with staff over at Sky Harbor. So we'll note that and we will make sure that gets passed along.
Sam says, yeah, Waymo gets all the credit. Valley Metro in all forms needs more credit over there. And Aaron says, I fly almost weekly on Wednesdays, and everyone on my flight talks about Waymo. And when I mention I'm taking light rail, I get, there's a light rail.
I can tell you, Sam and Aaron, that we've had conversations about how to improve promotion of Valley Metro at Sky Harbor. I am not really sure on the status of that, but I'll make sure to get more information and follow up with you too. It's a great suggestion and something that we are considering and trying to make it happen.
Comment says, Phoenix has this unfortunate reputation that transit is bad in Phoenix, so therefore some people don't even know that there's a train at all.
Aaron, that's certainly a misconception that we want to correct, and we work hard to make sure that's even coming from even more car dependent areas like Houston. Yeah, that's certainly something that we try to work on and educate people on how to, and Chicago, yes. And educate people on how to take transit in Phoenix. And as we expand our services and especially light rail, we are hopeful that more we are going to get more credit nationwide on transit.
Comment says, mostly talking about the airport as that would be Phoenix's first impression to people. The signs at the airport even still say Metro Light Rail, which hasn't been a thing since 2012, as its Valley Metro Rail.
Aaron, I want to just chime in here. Look, I know we we have a 30 minutes left designated for tonight, but I just want to emphasize that your feedback doesn't need to stop after tonight. So now I just see some Sam and Aaron. I'll let you guys. You just chime back in. I'll let Randy kind of read those off, and we'll keep going. Thank you.
Sam says, I've seen signs at the airport that say SkyTrain. That's what I know it by when I go to the airport. And Aaron says, the SkyTrain used to even announce it as Metro Rail and passenger pickup, and now it doesn't mention light rail at all. Aaron says, I know the airport has their own interests, paid parking, rental car fees, etc., but even just a little more cooperation from the airport would be great. Sam says, what are you going to do about the flooding when that happens on the rail? I've seen so many lines either flooded or trains stopped and cannot go because of these floods.
I can take that. So we have had, I think, in the past few days, some issues, especially related to some kind of unprecedented rain events. The flooding, especially in the tunnel, I think is coming to mind the most, but also some flooding by 50th Street Station. And so we're essentially working with the cities to help, because I think the underpass by the new South Central Extension was a bit of a new experience for us, but the 50th Street was not so much. So I think just working on some of that flood mitigation engineering is essentially what we're going to have to do for some of those flooding events on the rail.
Comments were also the bus shuttles that simply never show up. We instead all decided to pile onto the Route 1 bus that showed up instead.
Yeah, so I can just note a little something on that. So we do have what are called bus bridge plans for essentially contingency plans for when specific stops or stretches of the rail are inoperable. Um, Unfortunately, it's sometimes a bit of a scramble um, when those occur on the bus side to have that coordination between the bus and rail. Um, that does catch us off guard a little bit sometimes, but definitely taking lessons learned to improve the response time on those bus bridges. Um, on some of the newer stretches like the South Central Extension, but also on some of the other areas. So thankfully there was some of that local duplicative service on the one that you were able to take, but yeah, duly noted that we'll need to do a little bit better with the response time and the reliability of those bus bridges going forward.
Sam commented, bus delays.
And I'm guessing that was related to the previous comment, but if not, we can take more detail on that, like delays and if it's like reliability for specific lines.
Aaron asks, are there plans to get something even a few buses a day out to an exurb area, like Queen Creek, which has a downtown? These areas are serving nightlife, but telling people to drive there, that can't be good.
That I think does remain to be seen. I think given some of the challenges that Melissa had laid out a little bit earlier about some of the relatively lower amounts of ridership that we've had from pre-COVID, that we're probably focusing more on urban areas that are a little bit closer to serve. So there are areas that we have looked at, like Apache Junction, Queen Creek, Wickenburg, that have expressed kind of sporadic interest in having some transit. I think a lot of those areas have expressed a little bit more interest in internal circulation, I think, than actual regional connections of service. Um, I think both because of the cost to simply run the bus between the current fringes of the network and their downtown areas, but also I think desire to keep tax revenue and commerce within their own jurisdictional borders that have kind of directed them more in the flexible service microtransit direction. And even those, I think, are fraught with challenges of funding and the sustainability of funding and the cost of those services. So we have looked into that, but I think it is a bit of a challenge when you're weighing the, I guess, opportunity costs between running even a couple of buses out to those areas and then actually serving some of the more urbanized areas that are within the network to see, if you could be serving 2 to 3 times as many people with that bus in, say, a downtown Mesa or a downtown Tempe as opposed to a downtown Queen Creek. Kind of where do your priorities lie? So that is part of the reason that we're here, trying to get people's appetite for priorities and trade-offs like that, because there is kind of an opportunity cost to doing one or the other.
Aaron's follow-up was, those exurban areas need at least simple microtransit, but a way to get that microtransit out to a major bus line. And Sam asked, any more plans on getting more drivers hired on shared ride Valley Metro services? That's why my ride is delayed all the time.
So can you be more specific? The shared ride Valley Metro services, are those like just the fixed route buses, or are you thinking more like dial-a-ride shuttles that may pick up more than one person? I think dial-a-ride. So I think they're I guess I'm more familiar with the hiring pushes that have been made in the recent past on the fixed route side, but I think there have been a lot of pushes to increase hiring both through incentives and higher pay and better promotion of those job opportunities. I believe that's being mirrored on the dial-a-ride side as well, to efforts like implementing ride choice, though of course you have to be ambulatory and not require certain door-to-door services to use ride choice, but I think there has been that attempt to kind of supplement those services to make it so that there's not as much of a delay in the service.
Question is there a way to get transit signal priority on these crosstown routes like the 29? Having it bunch up due to poorly planned traffic signal timing is always aggravating. If the signals are smart enough to sense a bus is coming, it shouldn't turn red when there's 10 people waiting at the stop.
Yeah, this is a good point. Something that we've definitely been trying to work at internally. I think even on the light rail, we've been having a lot of issues with simple priority, and that I believe is kind of the number one priority for regaining some traffic signal priority and timing. And so current efforts are underway to make sure that those light rail corridors do have this priority. As for the bus, that is a little bit more of a heavier lift, I think, politically, because we can come to the table with a lot of other folks like, police, fire, emergency service folks that also want priority. And so it's always a bit of a tough sell to kind of shoulder your way in with those folks and say that you also want priority while competing with the voices of the world that say, I always get iced out at a traffic light or something because of, usually light rail was the culprit. But we can see that happening with bus as well. And we have been pushing for more transit signal priority, especially in pinch points where we have really low drops in OTP and really high loads on buses to maximize the return on investment, both from a reliability and a ridership standpoint. But of course, that relies on the cooperation of at least one, if not multiple cities on a corridor, depending on where that runs. But we definitely do promote the need for that kind of signal priority, especially for things like any kind of bus rapid transit plan, in addition, obviously, to any kind of dedicated right-of-way. And I agree, there should be some kind of a tiered system for priority. So in a perfect world, there would be a little bit more nuance, and it's not just an all or nothing thing for emergency services versus rail and bus, but kind of where we fit into a broader range. So yeah, definitely trying to push for that priority among cities, and hopefully do get a little bit of traction on that as we go forward. There is also some operational challenges with getting transit signal priority because one thing, the way that we operate the bus is we shuffle them essentially. So all of the vehicles would have to be equipped probably with some kind of a device, which of course has its own costs and installation delays, but um, those would be in addition to any kind of political will creation that we would have to actually get those both on the street and maintained in the long term by cities. So that was something that we experienced on the rail where we had transit signal priority installed and then it slowly eroded because it was not maintained properly over time. So um, there's quite a bit that goes into that, but we are definitely proponents of transit signal priority and do try to promote that whenever possible.
What about other spot treatments like queue jumps, like the 112 has at a few locations? What about other spot treatments like queue jumps, like the 112 has at a few locations? These shouldn't be that hard to overcome politically. One, they are already there, and two, it really doesn't take away existing lanes.
Yeah, agreed. I think definitely more palatable usually to have these implemented. Um, and they still do provide a good amount of utility to jump some of those bigger chunks of traffic. Um, so I think we can definitely look more into the spot treatments for queue jumps. Um, and I think just working with the cities essentially to make sure that we can implement that and really target them where they're needed based on on-time performance at a time point level. Um, is something that we've done a little bit in the past, but can do a little bit more aggressively in the future.
I find it a little funny that Transit Forward Tempe has practically none, but Suburban Chandler has all the queue jump lanes.
Yeah, I think this speaks to some of the geometric constraints that some of the cities are dealing with. I think Tempe is very a little bit more densely, obviously built than even than downtown Chandler. So they have, I think, less leeway than Chandler does with giving up certain lanes and just the width of the lanes, the number of lanes that they typically have, the amount of traffic that they typically have, to be able to take a lane or even a queue jump away. Can sometimes be a little bit more difficult, I think, for Tempe, um, given that. But I think they wouldn't have any more difficulty in implementing something like a um, transit signal priority, likely, as we've been talking about before, because of any kind of geometric constraint. So, but yeah, there's definitely a disparity.
There is this plan to elevate the University Drive rural light rail stop I saw in the MAG plans. Are these still happening?
As far as I know, they are still happening. Yeah, I haven't heard any plans to not implement this so far, but they are still in the earlier planning stages.
How would existing A-line trains be affected during the construction of an elevated section on an existing running right-of-way?
That is a good question. I'm not entirely sure about that. I imagine it might be similar to some of the work that had to be done in Tempe and in other areas where we had to work either on the crossing of the light rail or the construction of the streetcar, but obviously to a much greater extent. So those we were able to get away with just temporary closures or work at night. But I think that would all be part of the planning that's currently underway with MAG on that, in terms of not only what would it look like, but how would we actually get from design to construction and implementation without too great a disruption of service.
What are the plans to get countdown signs on light rail? It doesn't seem to be too hard to program into existing LED signs that are already there. Los Angeles and Atlanta use the same SCADA system we do, and they pulled it off.
So I think we have heard of plans to implement this based on the real-time information that we get now from all the vehicles. As you mentioned, we use SCADA on the light rail. And so all the information is available, even publicly, so there shouldn't be any lack of information. I think it's just the implementation that I've not heard exactly if there are any kind of kinks in implementing that, but there are plans to make it a countdown of the next vehicle instead of just giving the 2-minute triggers that occur based on geofences. So those are in the works. I'm not sure exactly what stage those are in. I think I've only heard preliminary talks about implementing that information on the signs, but I have heard there's quite a bit of demand to get that improved information on the system. So we can definitely incorporate that into, I guess, more of the wayfinding elements of this outreach that we get for folks.
Will streetcar get countdown signs as well?
I believe because they're pretty similar, that was my understanding, was that they would both get the same treatment. But again, I've only heard very preliminary plans to implement that that have been shared with the rail cities, and they all seemed on board with those plans.
Okay, we are coming up on the 2-hour mark. Erin, thank you for your highly informed. If we had all of our customers were as informed as you, our jobs would be a lot easier. We appreciate all of the informed questions.
Yeah, that's duly noted. I think because that is an area to your question about Tempe Transit Center. So at least the light rail would get that treatment, obviously, if it was implemented on the light rail system. But yeah, I think it remains to be seen. On the bus side, I've only heard City Phoenix having any plans to implement real-time countdowns, at least at bus stops.
It seems City of Phoenix went with VIX for the real-time signs, which was a good decision as they are already working on our fare system mobile app. You could add some real-time bus signs on the East Valley with the contract as well, I presume via change order.
It is possible. I'm not super well versed, I guess, in some of the back-end challenges of implementing that with the change order and expanding that into non-Phoenix territory. But we can look into that or see if there's another way that we could integrate that possibly with the publicly available information.
Okay, we're closing in on 8 o'clock. Want to thank everybody for the insightful, engaging questions and conversation. Sam, I saw you. You're welcome. Erin, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say my guess is you have already been in touch with staff previously, just given how informed you are of a transit advocate. This is just not the end of the conversation, obviously. We're just closing the door for tonight. We encourage you to stay in touch. We want to thank you all, Erin and Sam specifically, for your thoughtful questions and input. We appreciate it. And you know where to reach us if you have questions as we go forward. And we've noted all your comments. We're going to have we're going to put all of your questions and comment on record. And we will, especially as you said, Sky Harbor, we're going to share your thoughts that you had about Sky Harbor signage and their promotion of light rail. So with that, I will close the meeting. Again, thank you, everybody. Thank you for the Valley Metro staff, TDM, HDR, our consultants helping us on bus network redesign. And with that, we'll close it out and say a final thank you and good night. And Sam and Erin, you know where to reach us going forward. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you all.